What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the NBA Hardwood Show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. Talking today's 6-game NBA slate. Got the usual Monday crew here, Mangone, Third and Schlong. And we'll be breaking down all the games, hopefully picking the winners. Bryce, you were saying before the show you're not necessarily a fan of this slate overall, but hopefully you're doing – I know you're a little under the weather too, so maybe it's just a bad day in Bryceland. But how you doing on this Monday afternoon?
I think I'm just complaining. Travis was saying that he was sick yesterday. I never get sick, and I just sneezed and whatnot. So hopefully it doesn't interrupt the show too much. We also have people working on our floors right now, getting wood flooring put in our bedrooms. So that might be a contributing factor, but we're going to tough it out. Same way we're going to tough out the slate. It's not necessarily my favorite, but I haven't had the greatest last week, and I've liked every single slate. So today's probably the day when we have a good night. I needed 6 more points from Jimmy Butler to win the 100K on DraftKings last night. I ended up finishing 6th with an ice cube from Jimmy Butler. Ugh. So that pretty much summed my night up there.
Yeah, well, that's how it goes, right? Sometimes it's the slates that you don't like where the winners come through. And I've said this before, but I think it's pretty hard to predict, from slate to slate. The correlation of liking a slate and doing well on a slate, I think, is pretty much non-existent, to be honest. So
yeah, I think it's more correlated with day of the week. I historically do better on certain days of the week, and I think that's it's either the type of players that are playing that day. It used to be a thing. Baseball or basketball would be great on Mondays because you'd get all the football people, and I think stuff like that's definitely a contributing factor, the size of the slates, etc.
That all makes sense. We'll go over to you, Mangone. Looks like you're feeling better than you were yesterday. Got the fresh save going on, and it looks like you're ready to pick some winners tonight. How you doing, Mangone?
Yeah, I don't know. I was struggling Sunday. I don't know if it was the hour that messed me up. I'm not sure, but I feel 10 times better, and definitely excited to get back after this slate. We got a very interesting one, and excited to kind of dive into it. Hopefully Bryce feels a little bit better, because if anything I felt like yesterday, it was weird. But I'm excited for this slate. I feel refreshed too, so that's always good. It's a Monday as well, and tons of big prizes to win up top. So hopefully we can help you guys take some stuff down.
Absolutely. With that, let's get into the games. We'll go game by game via the DraftKings order if you're following along. First game we'll talk about, the only game that locks in that 7 Eastern time early window, is Charlotte and Detroit. And I think we kick it off with a pretty damn good DFS game here. Maybe not the best real-life basketball, but that doesn't matter. We're looking for fantasy points, and I think there might be some players who deliver them in this one, especially on the Charlotte side, because they are really, really down kind of to the bare bones of their roster, obviously missing LaMelo Ball, but also Seth Curry, Cody Martin. Obviously, they traded away some guys at the deadline. McGowan's also out for this game, still missing Mark Williams. And then it looks like Trey Mann, who had a pretty big role for this team, is going to miss another game. So we've kind of seen this Charlotte team with the tight rotation recently, and it's produced some pretty good fantasy results. I think that could be true tonight. It is Detroit who's favored by 5, which is kind of crazy for the Pistons to be favored by 5. Looks like the Pistons should be mostly healthy, I think, is fair to say. Obviously, they'll have the Ivy, Cunningham backcourt, Jalen Duren, all those guys. So, yeah, Bryce, we start off with a pretty good game here. And, there's other spots to go to, too. Specifically, Toronto is going to have a lot of discussion. But I like this game a lot to kick us off. And I think, really, Charlotte they're going to play 7 or 8 guys in this game for the most part. And a lot of the non-main guys are extremely low usage. So I really, really like this spot for the Charlotte Hornets. Where do you stand on Charlotte and Detroit to kick this slate off?
I've been over on Micic pretty much since he's gotten the starting role, especially in the reduced rotation. And, he's come through pretty much every day. I don't see myself getting off him here. I think he's one of the best values on the slate, and I think he's a good direct pivot off of some of this Toronto chalk that are I think could easily fail. They're massive dogs on the road in Denver. It's not something I think that you should get crazy excited about. They're just basically without their whole team. So yeah, I totally agree that Charlotte's like a good pivot off them. Micic will be one of my higher owned players tonight on both sites. I think that, you know, his role combined like with the ball handling abilities he's had as a distributor and ability to contribute in lots of statistical categories really like kind of sets him above like the other value ranges. And I mean, you're going to have to pay for it a little bit more, but I think it's worth it. In terms of other plays from Charlotte, I mean, they're basically running him, Bridges, Miller, Williams, and then either Bertans or Richards out there for like a majority of the minutes. I think those are like the 6 guys you really kind of want in this game. I ranking them, I'd go Micic, Bridges, Miller, Grant Williams, then Nick Richards. I just think the center is a pretty strong position today, and you know, I like the center on the other side more than Richards. Jalen Duran, I think he's a really strong play against a depleted front court. I mean, in games when Detroit does well, Duran's had really good games this year, and you know, you're not going to, as you mentioned, you're not going to see them as 5-point favorites like a lot. So I think it's pretty good to attack the Detroit side of the ball as well. Jaden Ivey has, you know, 5.9K seems too cheap for him to me. I think Thompson's a good play, assuming he plays. I guess he has asthma. I don't know why that's stopped him from playing yet, but you know, I guess it could tonight. I'm assuming that he's good to go though. And then Cade Cunningham's been a good contrarian spend for a while now. Normally it's been like, oh, if Detroit keeps the game close, it's normally through Cade Cunningham. Well, you know, if they're going to cover a 5-point spread, it's going to be through Cade Cunningham. So I like him as well. Favorite value play in the game is Micic. You know, favorite spends, Cunningham, Duran, Ivy, Bridges. And then, you know, with the rotation Charlotte's running, you know, Davis Bertans is never really the type of guy that excites me, but, you know, he's playing 30 minutes and, you know, he's not a bad fantasy like producer in those 30 minutes. He's like kind of relying on threes and stocks and rebounds, but you know, those are kind of the guys you want in tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't really have anybody else, right? It's like I mean, JT Thor just does absolutely nothing. He's terrible. But then they got like Poku, who, you know, got cut by OKC. Like even McGowan, who was playing some minutes, is out. I mean, yeah, I think I rank them pretty much the same way Bryce did, Mangone. I do have Micic number 1. I think it's close between Miller and Bridges. I honestly like both guys. And then, I mean, Grant Williams, Richards, and even Bertans, just given who they have. I think he's going to be out there for 30 minutes. He's going to get up, 10 3-pointers like he does every game. That's a player who's got some realistic upside. So I like all 6 of those Charlotte guys. Of course, I'm not going to play 6 guys on the same team, but I don't mind having for sure 3, maybe up to 4 Charlotte guys, especially if you're running a back, and you can with Detroit, right? Duran's an awesome play. I really like Cade Cunningham. Ivy looks good. Thompson's fine. I mean, if you want to get up to the top of the leaderboard early, obviously not a great strategy, but I think today it could work out well. Where do you stand here, man, going on this game?
I was going to say, this definitely feels like a game that you're going to be very heavy on, DC. You're going to have like 7 guys from this game loaded up. To be fair, so we kind of talked about it a little bit the other day. I don't know if I was on a show or if I was in the Discord, but they don't have anyone off their bench. Like, if you pull up Popcorn Machine and look at the rotations and everything.
That's what I'm saying. And even the guys who do play just are extremely low usage. So it's, you know.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, you have to like plays in this game. JT Thor. So I'm just going to say the bench guys first. In the last game, 4 guys came off the bench. Poku played 8 minutes off the bench. Nick Smith Jr. played 16. Bertans played 28 minutes, and he closed. And JT Thor played 12 minutes. Nick Richards did not close. Bertans is the one who closed. Bridges played 39 minutes. I should mention Richards, without closing, played 31 minutes. Grant Williams played 37, 38. Micic played 31, 32. Brandon Miller played 36. Like, there's just an insane amount of minutes that were played there. I don't even know if any of them were in foul trouble, right? There could have been one of those, like Micic only playing 31 or 32 minutes is surprising. Maybe he was in foul trouble. Maybe Nick Richards was. I don't know. But point being is Not only that, they're playing Detroit. Like, Detroit's a great matchup. So, like, you can't ignore Charlotte on this slate. Now, the next counterpoint would be, well, why wouldn't you play Charlotte? Maybe they're too expensive. Let's look at the price tags. 8-7 on Bridges. I mean, you could still play him at 8-7. Brandon Miller at 7-2. He can easily still get there. Micic at 5-8. He's a good play. I don't think he's a lock, but I think he's a very strong play. Nick Richards at 5-7. Grant Williams at 5-6. All these guys can definitely hit their value. Even Davis Bertans. Like, if Davis Bertans was up at like 5-8 or 6K, then it would be a little bit different. Or like Micic was up at like 6-7, 6-8. But they just all feel like they're underpriced by like maybe $500 or even $1,000. Now, yes, Bridges probably isn't, but the point I'm getting at is you want to play Charlotte guys. These guys are in the conversation. The only argument you can make to not play some of these guys is maybe there's better value. And to be fair, Javon Freeman Liberty is going to be a very big talking point on this slate, because if he like is going to be this extreme value like he is now, then you might not need some of these guards that we've talked about, like a Micic. And also, on the opposite side of Micic, Jaden Ivey could easily outscore him. And if you need Luka as the spend-up option, okay, well, then you're starting to run out of guards. So that's another thing to kind of call out. There's a lot of different factors that play into this slate. So Charlotte has a lot of good plays. I think you have to like these guys. You can't ignore them. Detroit, I think there's a lot of upside with some of these options. Like Jalen Duren at 6.4K playing against the Charlotte Hornets. There's definitely a ceiling there at the price. So he's in the conversation. Cade Cunningham at 8.4. He's shown it the last two slates. I mean, he obviously just has upside at this price with the minutes he's getting. Jaden Ivey at 5.9. It's just a great price tag for him with the ceiling that he can provide. Ausar Thompson is questionable, dealing with an illness. We'll see if he ends up playing. But if he doesn't play, it's just going to be a great spot for all these options. Isaiah Stewart, certainly in play. Fontecchio in play. My only argument, though, that I'll say, DC, is I want to be careful of how many of these Detroit guys I play. I don't want to be playing too much of them. I think I'll set a max of 3 of both of these guys, of both these teams. I think that's kind of the right way that I would go about it. But you can't ignore these plays. They're really good ones. It's just a game that if you're playing one lineup, it's really hard to make a decision on this. Like, you feel like whatever you decide to choose, if you don't get it right, you're going to feel like you picked wrong. And it's just one of those games. At the end of the night, you're probably going to need 2, 3, 4, or 5 of these guys, I think, on your teams. I just think you're going to need exposure to this game. Like, if you run teams and you don't have exposure, I don't know. I feel like it's just not going to win. Does that make sense? It just seems hard to not get exposure.
I think you almost have to have some Charlotte on your team. Detroit, I think you could definitely get away with not having any Detroit guys, but like if Charlotte plays well, if they just put up, their expected team total, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if, 5 of the 6 main guys that are going to get the minutes ended up with the DK flame emoji next to their name at the end of the night. And that's a team that I love to stack. Obviously I'm in on this game, and yeah, we'll be hope that, but I'll know probably pretty early if I have a chance on my main team. Because like I said, I think there's absolutely a chance that Charlotte has a bunch of guys that get there. And, if it's a close game, which I think it probably will be, I think the Detroit guys, the main three I'm looking at are Cunningham, Ivey, and Jalen Duren. But yeah, I think Thompson's okay. Isaiah Stewart's okay, depending on who's in and who's out. So really, really good game to kick us off, at least in my opinion. And yeah, hopefully we'll get some fireworks early. Let's go to the next game on the slate. It is, I think, another pretty interesting one for DFS purposes. Phoenix and Cleveland. Phoenix favored by 6.5 here. Total sitting at 220. Donovan Mitchell remains out for the Cleveland Cavaliers, as do Evan Mobley, Max Strus, Tristan Thompson, and Dean Wade. So it's another shorthanded night for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Phoenix should be more healthy than that. They will, though, be without Okogie, Nasir Little, and Eric Gordon, also going to miss for the Phoenix Suns. They will have their main 3 guys in there, Booker, Beal, and Kevin Durant. Really good spot here, Bryce, I think in particular for Darius Garland. He's been a little bit more up and down than I would have expected after, with Mitchell out. But we've seen lead guards destroy this Phoenix Suns team. So I think Garland at 8K is interesting. Jared Allen has been a monster on the court without Evan Mobley, which will be the case tonight. So, yeah, the Cleveland side's interesting. And then Phoenix, I think you have some interesting contrarian spends if you do want to go that direction. not quite the same defense from Cleveland without Evan Mobley on the court. Your thoughts here, Bryce, on Phoenix and Cleveland? You're muted, Bryce.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So I guess Mateo likes this game because he was barking the whole time. I was trying to get him to be quiet over there, but no, I mean, I think Phoenix is a harder sell than Cleveland here, just because like getting Booker back, like all the prices are slightly inflated. Like I would kind of gravitate. Like I don't really want to play any cheap Phoenix players. Like Booker back completely kills the cheap Phoenix guys, and then the expensive guys, like, I mean, Durant can still get there. Like, Nurkic can still get there. Like, I'm still going to have some exposure. Like, I'm not excluding them, but, like, they're definitely down on my list of guys. Like, if I'm making, like, 1 to 3 teams, I'm just not going to have them on my team. So, it's just a classic guy. Star back from injury spot, I kind of fade that team. Especially only if he's been out a while and the prices have adjusted, and they have adjusted. I think Durant would be the one if I had to pick and choose. I think his price is like, I mean, he's Kevin Durant, he can still get there, and Nurkic. On the other side of the ball, Cleveland, I mean, I think Garland's a very solid play. I mean, they're extremely thin. I think LeVert, like, I don't see how he doesn't play like high 30s, low 40s minutes in this spot. He always has the potential to put up a big game here, and you could easily see a ceiling game from him. I think he's the best play in this game, point per dollar. I think Jared Allen, like, he's been a solid play for a long time now. Like, his price is getting up there, but I think he's still good. Coming off a back-to-back, I worry more about the bigs than the guards in general, but Cleveland's shown that they want to win these games still, even without Mitchell and the rest of the supporting cast. So it doesn't worry me too much about him. Niang, you saw him like not play as many minutes last game, but he still put up a good fantasy score. He's still pretty cheap. I'm expecting him to start here. I mean, there's no Dean Wade, so there's even more minutes to go around. Sam Merrill, I think, is playable. Like, if he gets a good shooting game, he could be right there. I mean, Okoro's price is getting a little too high for what I perceive his upside to be.
Yeah.
So, my core plays here would probably be like LeVert type of deal. And then, Garland, Allen, and then the Cleveland secondary pieces are like, okay, I'm not rushing to get them in my lineup today.
I think that all makes sense. Yeah, I won't have much Phoenix. LeVert is projecting right now Mangone as one of the highest owned players on the slate. I totally get why. It does make me a little nervous on the second half of a back-to-back for LeVert, because I think he's dealing with, like, kind of seems like somewhat chronic knee soreness. So I'm a little bit worried about that just as a chalky play, but I totally get it. I mean, he's got big upside, no question about it. Where do you stand, Mangone, on Cleveland and Phoenix?
Yeah, I am definitely different than Bryce on this one. I think LeVert's, like, based on his ownership, and if he's coming off the bench, which he has been, now if he starts, my opinion would change.
Well, I'm expecting him to start today. That was based on him starting. But if he's off the bench, I totally agree with you. I think he'd be a great shot fade.
Okay. So why are you expecting him to start? Like, what's the reason for
it? Just that I kind of think he has to start in this spot. I mean, I don't think they're going to start Sam Merrill again. I mean, I have it as Garland, LeVert, Okoro, Niang, and Allen.
I don't think they'll start LeVert. They never start him. I mean,
they legit never start him. Like, yeah, I think they could go, like, clearly Garland and Allen are starting, right? Okoro, Niang, I would assume, start as well. And then
it's either Merrill or him starting.
I think it'll be Merrill, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, this is news that you should have by the start of the slate. I mean, it's probably going to be a late swap slate anyways, in my opinion. So
I just think they would have already started him if they wanted to. Like, I just think based on the guys they have, they would have already started him if they wanted to. So, like, I think he's a bad play right now. I hope a lot of people play him. he is someone when I go through and
Levert did start yesterday, Mango, so we're probably wrong on this.
Okay, okay. So to be fair, yesterday I felt like shit, and I set an alarm every 45 minutes to make sure I could make my adjustments or whatever. So it was like horrible. But then he's probably gonna start. So my bad. But I still am semi-cautious with him. Because I think there's a lot of really good plays in that range. Like you make case for a Derek White in that range or cheaper. Jaden, not like here's a great example. You could see on this slate Jaden Ivey, Michik, and a Javon Liberty. Like you can see all those guys be better plays at cheaper prices. Like guard is super deep. Now, one argument to make too is you play Levert at forward too. That's another really good counterpoint. You can play him at forward, so that's going to help him out a lot too. But I think there's other good forward pivots. So Karis LeVert is fine. I don't absolutely love him, but I'll kind of stay on that stance. Darius Garland is another one. I think he's a little bit too expensive right now, so I'm not super excited about Darius Garland at this point. Jared Allen, I don't totally mind. I think he's a perfectly fine play, but there are other good values, and it feels like a lot of these Cleveland plays that we have been playing, it feels like a lot of these guys, they're just getting overpriced now at this point, or getting expensive enough on a slate where we have other value that has emerged a bit, that is cheaper, like in that Charlotte-Detroit game that we talked about a little bit, and like some other games that we'll get to further on. So I'm going to be lower on the Cleveland side of the ball. If I had to rank them, it'd probably be Jared Allen is 8.6. Oh, man. I actually don't mind Okoro at 5K. So I'd probably say I like the cheap guys the most, the Okoros, the Niangs, and the Merrills. Then probably Levert, and then it's probably Allen and then Garland. Just because I think some of those guys that are expensive on Cleveland, they're just a little too priced up for my liking. And also keep in mind, if you're a guard, like that's one reason like Darius Garland's kind of further down on my list. If you're an expensive guard, you're going to have to do a ton to pay off your tag today. Like you have to be a slate winner. And that's why I like Luka later, because Luka has the ability to do something like that. But I think you got to be really careful with what you're doing with your guard position today, because there's so many good plays.
Yeah, absolutely. Like all slates, you're gonna have to nail, pretty much your entire lineup to get to the top. But I think those points are well taken. So that's Phoenix and Cleveland. We'll see on the starting lineup for Cleveland. Obviously, LeVert gets a nice bump, of course, if he is in the starting lineup. Next game we'll talk about in this 8 p.m. Eastern time window is Golden State and the San Antonio Spurs. Warriors favored by 5 in this one, 226 total. Looks like the Spurs should be more or less fully healthy. Looks like, Devin Vassell probable. He's expected to be in there. And they do have most of the rest of their team healthy outside of Chetty Osman. And then on the Warriors side, mostly healthy as well outside of Steph Curry, who's going to miss at least one more game. He is ruled out tonight. Decent total in this one, Bryce. Like I said, sitting at 226. And I know Victor Wembanyama has been very, very good to your bankroll this year. He's up to 10.5K. Hard to argue that he hasn't earned it, though, given the upside that he's shown. Over 70 in 2 of the last 3 games. Crazy to watch him perform. What are your thoughts here on Wembanyama and, of course, the rest of the Spurs along with the Warriors?
Wemby, I've been a huge Wemby stan this year. He's been on, a lot of my winning teams this year because people refuse to play him. I think he's a little hard to get to here. Coming off injury, it just seems like the game where Pop's going to play in like 20 minutes. And, Wemby can get there in like high 20s minutes at this price. It's really hard to score 70 or 80 fantasy points in like 20 minutes. So, if you want to be aggressive on Wemby's minutes projection, you're going to be well over the field on him because, like, I think most people are going to take a pretty much wait and see approach with his minutes back. But if you put him up at 28 to 30 minutes, like he was regularly playing before his injury, he rates out as a good play. So
I kind of depends. As a kind of a counterpoint, or I guess maybe the optimistic case on the minutes. I mean, there's no chance in hell the Spurs are playing him if he's anything.
If he's hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if nothing to play for, they're obviously going to treat him with the absolute kid gloves that they have all season long. So, I mean, I would assume he's 100% good to go here. So I get the cautious approach too, because he's so expensive and it's the Spurs, but like, in terms of like playing through some injury, I would see no reason why the Spurs would do that at all.
Yeah, I mean, even if he's not hurt, like, I think he's 100% healthy. Like, I could still see them holding back his minutes just because of how overly cautious they're being. I don't think he has any sort of lingering injury here. I think he really kills the rest of these Spurs. I think, like, if you wanted to play one other, it'd be like a Trey Jones for me. But, like, the Keldon Johnsons off the bench, like the Socans, the Collins. Even Devin Vassell, I think they're really hard to get to with Wemby back in the lineup just because he does so much for them, and their prices have been inflated with him being out. On the Warriors side of the ball, I think Trayce Jackson-Davis is probably one of the best plays of the slate, if not the best. He fills, a forward spot. He's going to start. This seems like a great pace-up game. Like, you've seen guys who were, like, guarding Wemby, and, it'll be a mix of him and Draymond, but, just go absolutely nuts against the Spurs because, like, while he's a great defensive player, the rest of the team is atrocious, and he still makes, like, mistakes on defense, like leaving guys open, going for blocks, stuff like that. So I think Trayce Jackson-Davis, really strong play here. With the rest of the Warriors, I don't think any of them are amazing plays, and I don't think any of them are, like, bad plays. Like, I think you can make a big case for, like, Pods, Wiggins, Chris Paul, Kuminga. I have them all pretty much rated the same. In terms of, like, point per dollar guys, like, they're all going to be in my pool. It's a really good matchup for all of them. I think it's pretty hard to distinguish the individual play here from them. If I had to choose, I'd probably say Pods. I just think his game fits really well with, like, the running gun style that the Spurs want to play here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Klay Thompson's going to definitely be the most contrarian option, playing limited minutes, 6,500. I don't think anyone's going to play him. So it's pretty much it for me in this game. It is a good total in the game I'd like to attack. It's just a little harder to figure out where to attack.
Yeah, I think that's fair on the Warriors. They all seem like decent plays. Nothing really standing out to me as being an outstanding play, which is obviously what we're going for the most part. Let's go to you, man, going for your take here on the Spurs and the Warriors.
Yeah, so one thing I should at least give Wemby the credit for is I saw him get 40 DK points in 7 minutes. Like, the dude's just literally an anomaly. So if he's going to be 2%, I think he can pay off the 10.5K tag. Like, so I know, Bryce, he's won you, like, all the slates. Like, one thing I've talked about this year is, like,
I always talk myself into playing him. Like, but it's like, oh, nobody's going to play Wemby. I'll play, like, 10% Wemby. And then it's like, I don't know, say I have 1 out of 10 teams of Wemby in the high stakes, which, might be where I end up at tonight. And actually one that ends up shipping. But
it's just like, if Wemby is going to be below, like, 10%, like, how can he not pay off that tag? Now, if the argument, Bryce, was we have no value, sure. But don't we have the value today, Bryce?
There's plenty of value.
Correct. So, like, that's how I always talk about these studs. Like, why are Luka and Jokic getting a lot of ownership? Well, if there was no value, they wouldn't be getting ownership because I couldn't go up and grab him at 12.4K. Like, Jason Tatum at 9.5 would infinitely be a way better play than Luka if I didn't have value. But we have the value. And also, we talked about it. Guard is deep. We have a lot of guard value that you can make an argument for. You can make an argument for Jaylen Brown, Karis LeVert, Derek White, Jaden Ivey, Meechik, Javon Freeman, Liberty. Like, why don't we have the money to spend up for Wemby? He is only center eligible on DK now, but I still think he's in the conversation for sure. I think we have to consider playing him, even though it feels like a price hike. I think Wemby's a really good contrarian tournament play. You know what the floor can be, but it doesn't take that much to get overweight in tournaments today. So I will make sure to be overweight. And it's against Golden State. Golden State's been playing better basketball, but I think you could definitely take a shot on it for sure. I definitely think you got to like Trayce today a little bit. He's definitely in the conversation as a good play. I think Kuminga is a really strong play today that you have to like in tournaments. At 7K, he's definitely going to have the opportunity to be a winning tournament play as a nice contrarian pivot. So I'll be interested in him for sure on this slate. And then the other Spurs to look at, like, I just think some of these guys are not worth it because I think we just have enough value and Wemby's back and we have some price hikes on them. Like, for instance, Jeremy Sokamp. Well, now he is 5'9". Keldon Johnson, he's 6K. Devin Vassell, he's 7'6". All these guys have gotten price hikes. So I'm not that excited about the Spurs. I think you can stay away from them unless it's Wemby. And there's just enough value on the slate where we're not forced into the Spurs. A lot of the times when we're forced into the Spurs, it's because there's a lot of guys out or there's just lack of value. And sometimes it's not just one, it's both of those scenarios. So overall, it's mainly Wemby for me, and then looking at someone like Kuminga and Trace Davis on the Warriors side of the ball.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think you make good points, Mangone. If you're playing a lot of lineups, I think you're kind of crazy not to get over the field on a 3% Wemby, right? I mean, that's that Bryce maybe disagree a little bit on the minutes, but like that's how you've won some of these big tournaments is being just over the field on a low stud like Wemby, who can put up, frankly, points maybe faster than anybody else in basketball. And we don't know that he's going to be limited, right? Yeah, it's fine to guess, but like, there's a way better than 3% chance that he's just going to play his 32 minutes, right?
I always end up talking myself into more Wemby by the end of the night. I think I made him after I started doing that. I was like, I'm not high enough on him on the show, so I'm just going to make him my play of the day every slate because I'm always over on him.
Yeah.
So, well, it's like I always expect him to come in higher owned than he does too. It's like, oh, like the field's going to play like 15, 20% Wemby, and it's like, oh, he's like 5%. What the fuck?
So I just told myself, like when we talked obviously a lot about DFS at the party, and I basically told myself, when you were saying like, oh, Wemby's been on a lot of my shippers, and I've had some good nights with Wemby too, but not as good as you. I was like, the rest of the season, I'm just playing him like every single night, and it's gonna work out by the end of the year. So
right,
I just want to be overweight on it.
Unless
it's funny because
he's on a minutes limit or whatever, I think it's just such a good player to roll the dice on, especially obviously at low ownership. But
I think it's funny. He's been like an RPS guy like from the very start of the season. Like Tony and JSU were like nutting themselves over him, and I was like, okay, this dude can't like score like this. Like he's only going to play like 15, 20 minutes a game, and he can't score like that. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah, being high on Victor Wembanyama seems like something that you just kind of want to generally be going forward because he is an absolute freak. But we'll move on to the next game: Dallas and Chicago. 232 total in this one, the highest on the slate. It is Dallas favored by 3.5. We do have two more or less healthy teams for this game. But it certainly hasn't mattered for Luka Doncic, who has scored 70 plus, and I think in 7 or 8 straight performances. Just crazy run that Luka's on, playing massive minutes. If you've been playing a lot of Luka, you've been likely having some pretty good nights in the DFS streets. We have seen Chicago play good defense overall. They do have Alex Caruso, one of the better defenders in the league. And if you look at like the position, defense versus position numbers, I think those can be a little bit overblown at times, but Chicago's been very, very good, both against the point guard and shooting guard spot. Now, you can certainly argue it won't matter against Luka, but I do think it's at least worth mentioning. And I'm curious where you stand, Bryce, on the Luka question. He is up to 12.4K, certainly an earned price tag, but they are fully healthy, and you do have to at least acknowledge, I think, that the matchup here is not great on an individual level for Luka. Where do you stand, Bryce? Luka, and then the rest of Dallas and Chicago, of course.
I'm going to be under on Luka tonight. I think he's going to be mega owned on DraftKings. Even at 12.4, I think he's a harder sell to people on FanDuel. 12.8. The only time it's really hard to pay off a 13K tag on FanDuel. Unless he goes out, like even if he gets you 40, 10, and 10, he likely doesn't pay off the tag. Like he needs like a 15 or 20 assist game, or like he needs to throw some stocks in there. And like if you look at his game log, once he had a good stock game, like never outside of the last game. So he's definitely gonna be a sell for me on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you can go like way higher or lower. The turnovers don't hurt him as much. The stocks don't help him as much. I'm still gonna be under the field. I'm seeing him projected like 30% owned tonight. I think that's I think that's simply too high. I'll take my chances with other studs, mixing and matching, like, I don't know, a Wemby, like, even some of these Boston guys, like, there are guys to spend up on. Like, if you play Jokic tonight, you're going to be very contrarian because people that are hand building lineups are not going to click in Jokic because of the blowout risk. Like, it's 15.5 points. It's a 6-game slate. I don't think you can worry that much about it. Dallas is probably like an under the field spot in general for me tonight. Chicago, I think that Caruso could play extended minutes here, like guarding Luka. I think he's a pretty solid play. I think Ao it is a great play as well. I don't see how he doesn't play big minutes here. I mean, what you're getting with the Chicago guys. And then I really like Vooch. Like, if I had to handpick the Chicago guys, like, I'm going to play all 5 of the starters, none of the bench guys. It's the same thing for me every night. If I had to handpick guys, I'd rank them Caruso, Ao, Vooch in terms of value. I think Vooch is in a really solid matchup, like pretty big pace up game for them. And, even with Gafford starting, I don't see anyone on Dallas who can guard him. I think their game plan is going to be good to go to him a lot. So this is probably more of an under game for me in general, but I do like some of the Chicago guys. I will have Luka in some lineups. Like, I'm not like totally fading him. I'm not a crazy person, but I'm likely going to be under the field on him.
That's where I kind of stand too. Glad to hear you're on the same page with Luka. I just don't like purposely going into, the teeth of the toughest matchup, like both on paper and then just, Caruso, I mean, is going to be up for that. Like, just, can he stop Luka? Of course not. Nobody can, Mangone, but I do worry about the individual matchup. Where do you stand, Mangone, on Luka and the rest of this game?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's a good spot for Luka. Like, no doubt, good spot for him. You're not going to argue against that. The question is the price and the position. And this is where I think it gets interesting because he's 12.4K. Let's talk about forwards too. The most expensive forwards are Durant and Tatum, 9K and 9.4. And then there's Jokic at 11.6. I mean, my take on it is it depends what you really think of the cheap guards. Like, someone asked you, and Trevor Bryan asked, do you need Luka in Singletary? I don't think you need him. But I think it depends what you think of these other guards, because if the value guards just do well, like if you're getting 40 from LeVert and 40 from Michik and all these cheaper guys, yeah, you're not going to need Luka at the end of the day. You just won't need him. But if Luka obviously goes for 80 plus, you're just going to need him on your teams. That's how it kind of works. Like, we've had slates where Jokic has gone for 90 and the value centers were so good that it didn't matter that Jokic went for 90. So it just depends on what you think of the value. That's going to be the first thing. And I personally think the value is the best at the guard position. So that's why I could make a case for Jokic being a better play possibly. But to Bryce's point, well, he could lose that blowout run, of course. That could hurt you for sure on that Jokic side. But I think Luka, good play. I think you want to get exposure to him. I think Tatum's probably one of the best studs on this slate. But again, you make the argument for the blowout on him as well. But Luka's a good play. It's very simple. Get exposure to him if you're playing. He's a good play. I don't like Kyrie as a pivot. I don't think he's that great of an option. I just don't think it's worth it, especially with how good the guard position is. And I don't think there's many other good plays on this Dallas side of the ball in general. Like, we played Daniel Gafford the other day, but Derek Lively's there. Like, I'm not excited about him, and I think that could mess some stuff up. The Chicago side of the ball, the only guy I'm really interested in is probably Vucevic at the center position at 8.3K. I think he can pay off his tag. It is worth mentioning that this Dallas team has not been good defensively with Daniel Gafford in there, and a center like Vucevic could totally destroy him. So, and then I think Alex Caruso's fine at 5.3K. The argument for Alex Caruso is when he plays someone against like Luka, he's likely going to be matching his minutes on the court, and Luka's minutes are probably going to be 38 to 40, and he's going to be around the ball a lot, chasing the ball. Like, there's an opportunity for a ceiling performance. So I wouldn't pull him out of your MME pool. Yes, he might get tired chasing around. My point is he's just going to be on the court a shit ton. Like, he's going to play. He's going to be near the ball a lot. It's opportunities for stock. So I only like Caruso and Vucevic on the Bulls. And then on the Dallas side, it's really only Luka for me.
Yeah, we're the same way. And I love the Vooch call. I could see a big performance out of him. So I do like that call. We'll go to what I think could be, maybe the most, I don't know, polarizing game of the night. We have Toronto and Denver. Denver, massive favorites at home here, 16-point favorites, total sitting around 230. Denver is mostly healthy for this game. Looks like DeAndre Jordan might sit, but yeah, they should have pretty much everybody else in there. But Toronto is extremely banged up for this one. Obviously, they lost Scotty Barnes recently for the season, but they'll also be without Emmanuel Quickly, Gary Trent, and then Bruce Brown is questionable. Looks like RJ Barrett should be in there. Chris Boucher also out for the Raptors. So Jakob Poeltl has been he's out for the season as well. So things unraveling quickly here for Toronto. Now they got to go, Bryce. It's the toughest place to play in the entire league, in the altitude of Denver. And it's the NBA, and we see shorthanded teams compete all the time. But looking at who Toronto has left, it's hard for me at least, to imagine them keeping this game close if Denver plays at all up to their capabilities. We are looking at essentially G Leaguer Freeman Liberty probably getting the start here, especially if Bruce Brown misses, which I kind of think Bruce Brown just sits this game out too, but we'll see on him. And then, in theory, a really good spot for RJ Barrett, Kelly Olynyk. You could argue, Grady Dick, I think, is going to get a whole bunch of ownership. It's just a weird spot because there is obviously so much opportunity to go around with the guys that are out for Toronto, but it's a pretty awful spot other than that. Where do you stand, Bryce, on Toronto and Denver? I didn't talk much about the Denver side, obviously, touch on those guys as well, but what to do with Toronto, I think, is probably the biggest overall question mark on this slate for me. Go ahead, Bryce, Toronto and Denver.
I'll probably play it straight up with Toronto. I try not to bake too much blowout risk into short slates, the games could ease. Kelly Olynyk and RJ Barrett are still definitely NBA quality players.
Sure.
Bruce Brown's a good NBA player. Grady Dick is a borderline good NBA player. Javon Freeman Liberty is not an NBA player. He's at best a bench roll guy. But, if he's going to have the ball in his hands and he's 3,500 and he's going to play 30 minutes, it's kind of hard to find guys like that. So I get playing him. I'm not going to go nuts on him. I think a good way to play Toronto is make a rule of max 2 or 3 Toronto. Definitely, I don't think they're a max 4 or 5 situation. They're extremely thin, but it's such a bad macro spot for them that, I think when you're building your teams, just putting a rule on how many you can have in your lineup makes a ton of sense to me. Baji, Dick, Olynyk, Barrett, Freeman Liberty. You could even make a case for a Jordan and Nwora or a Jalen McDaniels. These guys are going to make my pool. I don't see myself jamming any of them. If Freeman Liberty starts, I'm probably going to be pretty high on him, but that's just because he's 3,500, and I would expect him to get blowout run either way. They're not going to be playing RJ Barrett in a blowout. You've seen him play Kelly Olynyk in a blowout, which to me is weird. So I'd be a little more confident with him than RJ Barrett. If I had to choose between the two. Denver side of the ball, it's pretty much Jokic or bust here. They're going to score points and they're going to score them at will. It could just be a game where Jokic is just passing it a ton, and the secondary playmakers. Excuse me. I kind of like a rule of 2 max Denver here. I'm fine playing the studs together. They can get there even in a blowout on a 6-game slate. One of them can go absolutely insane in this spot. So Jokic is still going to be in my pool. Don't absolutely love him. I don't think single entry guys are going to be clicking them at all because of the blowout risk. I think Jamal Murray is a decent contrarian spend at guard just because guard is so loaded, like Travis said, and with the blowout risk. Porter and Gordon, I definitely think you can fill your lineups out with. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, makes sense. And I got to say, I'm not a big fan of Grady Dick being relevant because it's just, there's too many chances to say something stupid. I don't know if you've seen the video It's from back in the day. It was Mr. Eric Crane and Boggs Light, and a pitcher named, I think his name was Eric Koch, but Crane says, "Do you like cock tonight?" And then Bog just burst out laughing. And yeah, Grady Dick can do the same thing to us. So yeah, as Javon Town asks, do you need some dick tonight in your life, Mango?
I don't know if I need some dick, but I might want some dick tonight. DC. That may be where I'm at. We'll have to see. But I think he's worth getting exposure to. Let me look at the position eligibility, because I think that's important with him, because I believe he has the forward eligibility, or maybe he doesn't. I know it's gone back and forth with him. He is, let's see, does he have the forward? Yes, he does. I actually think that matters, because like if I'm a hand builder or playing one lineup, I want to put Grady Dick in the forward position. I think that matters a ton. I don't think him in the guard spot makes sense. I think guard is just super deep. So I'm going to play him at the forward spot more. Think he's a good play. Think he's in the conversation. Like we talk about it a lot, DC. When these guys when these really good options like Grady Dick get a lot more minutes, and they're just going to put up like 15 to 20 shots, like how do you not get exposure to him? Like, especially at this price, like it's an increased role, and we've got a lot of questionable tags in this game where it could get even better later on. Like I think Bryce kind of alluded to it earlier. He alluded to the possibility of being able to late swap a lot tonight, and you could get these guys at a lot lower ownership. So I think Grady Dick is definitely a good play. The Freeman Liberty stuff, it's currently popping right now because I think they are assuming he's going to like get the start and get a lot of minutes. That could change later on, and we're not as excited about that play. And there could be other options that pop up. Not sure what they're going to do, but we'll have to see. I also think you could see Jonte Porter pop up as a really good play as a 3K center option, but it really depends what the starting lineup's going to be. I think that's going to dictate a lot of different things. So these Raptors are clearly good plays, but the starting lineup is really key. That's why it's important to be in the Discord chat over at Run Pure Sports. We always talk about that a ton, to be able to make these swaps and pivots. Like the other day, RJ Barrett got ruled out. You had 9 minutes to make an adjustment for it. And, I had to sit there and just like crank it out. It was awful. It was miserable having to do it and try to figure it out, but gave me an edge on the slate. And you could easily see Javon Freeman Liberty not get the start. And right now he is projected as a play that people think is a good play. And around the industry, the consensus is he's a good play, and he could not be a good play later on. And you got to make sure you're making those adjustments with your team. So that's why late swapping is very pivotal. We'll see when we get that news. But Kelly Olynyk is the tough one because the dude has been crushing, but he is 6.9K now. Like 6.9K is a steep tag. So I'm a little cautious with Kelly Olynyk. If he does start, which I think he will, sure, I might get a little more interested, but I want to see what's going to happen with some of these other options. Like RJ Barrett, it seems like he's going to play. Like I'd rather play RJ Barrett over Kelly Olynyk at 7.6K. I think he would be a better play. I think you'd make a case if Bruce Brown was a starter at 4.8K. I'd be more interested in him. But that starting lineup is going to be key, because if they start a Bruce Brown over like a Javon Freeman Liberty, it's going to show that they're playing some of these other guys. Or if they start a Javon Freeman Liberty, it shows they're just playing the scrubs. And then maybe you're going to be lower on some of these, like, well-known players. Like if you see just a full scrub lineup out there and even Kelly Olynyk starting, maybe there's a good opportunity to be under on Kelly Olynyk, because maybe he won't close the game out. Also, if it's a blowout, do you expect Kelly Olynyk to play in blowout? Probably not. Also, one more thing to mention, DC, with the Raptors, the last game on the slate with the Celtics, it's definitely a good game where if things don't fall your way with the Raptors, you have pivots that you can go to in the Boston game to not feel as bad about, right? Like one of the big things to talk about with late swapping is if you do not have options later on, you have to make decisions early. Yes, there's good plays early, but there are good plays late where you can make a case that swapping is like it's good to swap tonight, because if you don't get the news to go your way, you have other options you can pivot to. And if the news, let's say it goes your way, you can just play those plays. So I think late swapping is very pivotal tonight.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I'll add a couple things. I think it's normally not the case where, the two highest priced players on a team, you don't necessarily want to play them together. I think this is a case where RJ Barrett and Kelly Olynyk are positively correlated together, because they both got to play well to get the minutes, right? I think if Toronto keeps this game close, both Olynyk and Barrett are going to have big games. I think they're going to pay off their salary. if they get blown out, neither guy gets there. So I do think those two, it makes sense to me to kind of play them together on the same lineup or fade them on the same lineup because I do think they're highly correlated. And then with Freeman Liberty, so he's played 18 minutes in each of the last 3 games. He's also essentially been on the court for like every single minute that Emmanuel Quickly has him, including oftentimes subbing directly in and out for Quickly. But those games were without Bruce Brown. And if Brown is back, I do think he could potentially, maybe likely, get the start at point guard. Bruce Brown would become a pretty interesting play at that point. Obviously played in Denver. I mean, if he's in there, you would assume he'd want to put up a big performance against his old team in front of his old fans. So he would be interesting. And then I will say Freeman Liberty, like he's a G League player, but he was like a lead guard, a big scorer in the G League. I like to look up just to make sure that they were productive, at least at the lower level. So he averaged 35 minutes a game, 24 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, a couple steals. So, he did at least perform in that role as a lead guard. Of course, G League, not the same level of competition, but I do think he's at least a capable offensive player. And honestly, if he gets a start and Brown's out at 3,500, I would have a hard time imagining he didn't get there because, he might be blowout proof too, right? Freeman Liberty. I mean, he might have to be out there kind of no matter however this game goes down, especially if Bruce Brown is out. So just wanted to add those couple points with the Raptors. Let's get to the final game on the slate. It is the Boston Celtics, Portland Trail Blazers. Another game with what looks like some decent blowout risk here. Boston favored by 12, 219 total in this one. The Celtics will be without both Porzingis and Drew Holiday, so 2 of their starters are going to be out. And then Portland, of course, has been pretty decimated by injury. They'll be without Brogdon, Shaedon Sharp. Jabari Walker is going to miss this game. And then Jeremy Grant is questionable. He's missed a lot of time recently. I think there's a decent chance he'll sit this game out as well. We'll start with you, Bryce. Another game. I'm glad you could argue either way, but we did get the Boston news earlier, right? Earlier in the day, they listed their entire starting lineup as questionable. I thought there was a decent chance the slate would go off and we wouldn't have any news on Boston at all. So we do have some clarification on who's going to be in there for Boston. How are you attacking the Celtics and the Trailblazers?
I think regardless of how the Toronto news ends up, this is one of the better games to attack in terms of both guys you want to spend on and value plays. You got Porzingis and Holiday, both out for Boston. I'm kind of expecting the lineup to be White, Brown, Tatum, Horford, and then the last one's kind of up for debate. I'm guessing it's Sam Hauser. I think him and Pritchard are both decent plays for cheap. I don't think it's going to be Cornette. I don't really see who else it could be other than one of those 3. But, yeah, I mean, I like the Boston spend-ups a lot on the slate. I don't think Tatum's going to be very popular. I think he's probably the chalkiest guy up top just because you get a massive discount, massive team total, and you kind of if you're hand building teams, he's a much easier fit than some of these mega expensive guys. So I think a lot of people are going to take the discount, go with him. I don't think he's bad chalk. I'm still going to play a good amount of Tatum here. But just be wary that's kind of what the field is going to do as well. Jaylen Brown is someone I want to be over on. Derek White's someone I want to be over on. Horford, and not particularly. I think Pritchard and Hauser are decent pivots off of the Toronto chalk. Both of them are going to get tick. And, if the game does blow out, they're going to be out there for the blowout as well. So I think they're decent chalk pivots here. Portland, I don't mind Simons at 8.1. My personal take is that I think they can keep this game close. And, I might eat those words at the end of the night, but we'll see. Ayton had an absolute monster game last time that came almost completely out of nowhere, in my opinion. I don't think he's going for 30 and 20 a night. He doesn't need to go for 30 and 20. If he goes for, a double-double, he likely gets there. Don't love him at center, but he's definitely be in my pool. favorite play on Portland is Delano Banton. He's been playing absolutely monster minutes. He's been playing with both the first and second units, which makes me like when I see that, it's like this guy's going to play if it's a blowout or if it's not a blowout. So, I think he's one of the most overlooked values on the slate and someone that like isn't getting the ownership projections around the industry that I would have expected. So, point per dollar, he's definitely my favorite option here. And then like with the rest of the remaining Portland pieces, I mean, you can mix and match them. Murray's playable. Tyball's borderline playable. Kamara's playable. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, Banton 2 huge games in a row. Last game did go to overtime, but still was at 37 or so minutes prior to that. And I mean, he played for Boston too, I think. So if you want to go to the revenge factor, man, going, 5,100 for Banton. Listen, I think there's some risk there too, but you just can't find the level of upside that he brings to the table at that price point. Let's go to you, Mangone. Your thoughts on Portland and Boston?
Yeah, I mean, some might say it was an elite fantasy production from.
There we go. Now, I can get behind that. That's better.
So one thing to call out too, like we're in March, right? And we get these teams that just absolutely quit and they just like run guys out there forever. And I mean, we've seen like some signs that they were just gonna like push Banton. It just feels like they're gonna push him like the rest of the year. Like, why not? The guy's been pretty good. So I like Banton at 5-1. I think he's a contrarian tournament play that you have to consider. And again, a good pivot if you want to wait on some of this Toronto stuff, that's perfectly fine. Another thing to call is everyone says, and this is the same take with the Jokic thing. Like, oh, Tatum, what if the game blows out? What if the game stays close? You're telling me the dude's not going to like literally win you tournaments? I mean, he is. Another reason why I think I would favor Jokic and Tatum over Luka is the ability to late swap. Like, let's say news doesn't go my way. Tatum can become Jaylen Brown. That's an easy pivot that I can make instead. You can just move plays around a lot easier with those extra spots than rather being locked into Luka. So I did want to talk about that. That's why I think I'm going to be lower on Luka than some of these other studs instead. And also, Boston's missing Porzingis and Drew Holiday. I got Al Horford I can go to. I have Derek White I can go to. There's a lot of different options here. I don't hate the Ayton call by Bryce. I just think there's other centers I'd rather get to. So I probably won't get too excited about him. Scoot Henderson, his minutes the other night, first game back, 26 minutes. Curious to see if that gets a little bit of an uptick. It certainly can. So that's something to watch for and see how those are monitored. And some of these other options like Chris Murray, Tumani Kamara, they might not pop every slate, but like they're going to pop here and there. So don't completely ignore them. Like if you're getting small amounts of them in MME or if you have to make pivots off these Raptors, these aren't the worst plays. They're obviously not better plays than some of these guys that we're talking about, but they're not the worst contrarian tournament option. So this is another game that's good to talk about. It's one that I think you want to get exposure to in MME. And another reason why I don't mind backloading a little bit tonight. Sure, I want exposure to some of these other games, the Charlotte and Detroit like we talked about, but I want to have spots to make pivots because I think there's going to be opportunities to take advantage of this. I'm curious what Fallick does tonight. I know if you are in the Run Pure Sports Discord, if you check our guy K Fallick's course, I'm curious what he does tonight because I know he likes to try and take chances on this for sure. And then sometimes that leads to really huge nights for him. So that's something that I am watching for. And someone in the chat is saying that Bruce Brown is out and then other people are saying we don't see that. I don't see that either. So I wait for the Bruce Brown news. We have tons of time. We don't have to overreact. And if you have the news, then post it as a tweet. But I'm going to operate as Bruce Brown is questionable right now.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything either. I do expect him to sit. He's missed 4 games in a row. It would kind of seem like a weird spot to bring him back, but I haven't seen anything official on Bruce Brown. That's all 6 games. Let's get to the plays of the day. Then we'll get on out of here. We will start with you, Bryce. Your play of the day today.
Delano Banton. I think he's way too cheap for this role that he's playing. Not seen him projected anywhere near what I expected to. Like, I would expect to see him at like 35% ownership, like around the industry, 40%. And I'm seeing significantly below that, which, is where I think he should be. So I really like Delano Banton today. He makes a lot of builds fit and he gets off some cheap chalk.
Love it. Delano Banton for Bryce. Let's go to you, Mangone. Your Taylor Swift's box play of the day.
Yeah, we're going to go to a guy I haven't talked about, and he was just in this last game. So when Boston is shorthanded, we always see like some of these just bench guys pop off. Sometimes it's Peyton Pritchard. I'm hoping today it is Sam Hauser. I think it's a pretty good spot for him at 3.6K. Also has that forward eligibility. And if he plays like 24 minutes, I think he can have a good game. So interesting value play that I think no one's going to get to. I know, DC, you absolutely hate the play. That's okay. I think Sam Hauser is going to get some good run if he's in the starting lineup, and I think he's going to be in the starting lineup tonight. I mean, who else is starting, DC? Like, do you have a different starter?
No, I'm still not playing Sam Hauser. One of the worst plays of the day that's ever existed on this show.
It's
Do better
not.
next time, man.
To be fair, you said that once again about Al Horford, and he dropped 40 DK points. He did. You and AP made fun of me. I'm telling you, Sam Hauser is going to start. Like, it's just who's going to start on the Celtics tonight?
Yeah, and scored 13.5 fantasy points. You enjoy those points, man. Going.
Well, if the DC Sportsbook is open for over on 13.5, I will slide on in. I'll say that. So yeah,
I'll
so
send you a DM. I'll close it out. I'll stick with my guy Brandon Miller. I love the Charlotte side, and I think he's got a lot more up. He's been okay recently, not bad, but I think he's got a lot more upside and no better matchup really than the Detroit Pistons. All right, that'll do it for this show. We do, of course, have the Up to Lock show coming up in about 10 minutes for members. If you do want to join us, you can use promo code RPS15 for 15% off your first weekly or monthly payment. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow for Mangone for Third and Schlong. I'm DC, and we're out of here.